Good evening, Goeienaand, fellow South Africans. Now, before I introduce the video which I'll play, I do want to remind all people in South Africa that there is a Black Monday march taking place on the 29th of October. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link directly below this video a link to WhatsApp, where you can actually go into that link and talk directly with the organizers in places like Cape Town. Okay, get involved. It's very, very important you get involved. The world needs to know what is going on because the mainstream media are totally covering it up. Okay, the fake news network, once known as CNN, now known as FNN. That's my take on it. But the video that I'm introducing now is Ian Cameron. He's just spoken to Sky News here in Australia and bringing out the whole issue of what is going on in South Africa and the farm murders and so on. So I'll let you watch the video, and please do take that WhatsApp link and get in touch with the organizers and see if you can participate or help in any way. All right, guys? And don't forget to subscribe to be kept informed. Take care.
Other such bodies or organisations. We're now going to talk about South African farmers, a topic which is we've explored at length on this show. Unlike most other shows in Australia, you won't hear the plight of the white South African farmers debated or discussed. So we're going now crossing to Perth, where we're going to be speaking to a member of an outfit called Afriforum. And he's going to be filling us in on the latest that is happening in South Africa with the farmers. He's here in Australia. He's been speaking to the Australian government, members of the government, and we're pleased to have him on here on Outsiders this morning. Welcome from Perth, Ian Cameron.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Now, Ian, this is a very unusual situation for me, wedged between two Camerons, you know, so I feel a bit like the persecuted...
Paradise.
Paradise, OK. So my co-host Ross Cameron is with me, Ian Cameron. Now, you're out here from South Africa, obviously. Now, tell us a little bit first about Afriforum. It is an outfit that has come in for criticism, but tell us your role with Afriforum and why you're in Australia.
Yeah, well, basically, we felt the need, especially after our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, recently said that farmer tax is something that does not exist. He made it very clear that farm murders in South Africa is just a figment of the imagination, and we felt it very important that we come to Australia and obviously other countries too, where we are sharing the truth of what is happening in South Africa. And I think this morning is an opportunity for me to share a little bit more about what is currently happening there. For example, just since the 1st of January in 2018, we've already had more than 344 attacks on farms in South Africa, and about 45 people have been murdered on farms in the country. And from Afriforum's side, we're a civil rights body in South Africa that feel it's very important that we raise the plight of this specific issue.
So, Ian, so people would... your outfit, Afriforum, has been criticised. You know, you've had the usual accusations of being white supremacist and so on. But what was fascinating is last week, which we highlighted on this show, the Zulu King Goodwill, came out and said that the Zulus should be working with the white South African farmers, basically to make sure that the country has enough food. So talk us through, your response to that, and then I'd like you to just tell us some specific examples that you personally have witnessed, because we keep being told, particularly by the left in this country and on certain TV shows, oh, no, those crimes against white South African farmers, they're just random acts of violence. It might happen in any country, just normal criminal activity, nothing racially based, nothing to do with the political situation, nothing to do with them being white. Or the perpetrators being black, or the colour of the skin not being important. So tell us, from your point of view, the murders that you personally have been aware of and the situations you've found yourself in where you have been confronted by these acts of violence.
Well, I think from our side, we've never failed to reach out a hand to any other organization in South Africa. We work with several organizations across any cultural base or racial group that you could think of, and we've done that for the past more than 12 years of our existence. So it's sad to see that certain organizations and especially certain media groups decide to deliberately cause this polarizing kind of how can you say, a polarizing mood between different groups. And I feel it's very unnecessary, because in the end, it's them themselves that are actually losing the specific battle. When we look at farmer tax in South Africa and we take culture or race out of it completely, it's something that has a negative impact on the entire country. The average farmer in South Africa feeds about 2,000 people. If you lose a farmer, immediately the South African economy loses about 2 million rand on average. So if you go look at the specific and unique group of people in the country, we estimate that there are about 32,000 commercial farmers in the country. Those are the last mostly accurate census figures that we've been able to receive. And if we consider those figures, it's very clear that there is a major issue. When we look at the murder rate in South Africa, when you look proportionately at farmers, a farmer has 3 times more chance of being murdered in the country than the average citizen, and more than double the chance of being murdered in South Africa than a police officer in the country would, which is obviously very worrying if you consider that the country already has a major murder problem that has been increasing with about 1,000 murders for the past 7 years.
Can I ask, Ian, we played some footage on the show of the government's own inquiry into land ownership, under which I understand the parliamentary representatives went around the country taking input from ordinary citizens and activists around South Africa about land ownership. And one of the messages that came through from elements in the black South African community was people saying that actually white people don't belong in South Africa, that you don't really have a right to exist in South Africa, that Africa is for black people. How does Afriforum respond to that proposition?
Well, we very often hear this in South Africa. In the last few months, we've had several public hearings regarding the land issue in the country when it comes to land expropriation without compensation. Obviously, we are forming a very firm resistance against this, because we believe that it's something that will it would destroy the economy in the country, as we saw in, for example, Zimbabwe. The privilege that Zimbabweans had is that they could move south to South Africa. We have got nowhere to go. So it's very important that we share this message. But it was interesting to see that at these public hearings, that this type of very far left, almost I would like to call it an extremist type of ideology, weighs much stronger than logic. And logic clearly shows us, and through history we can learn, that this model simply cannot work. So regardless of race, it's something that cannot work properly. And there's a misperception that is created by the South African government, even by our President Cyril Ramaphosa, that shares with the world that white people in South Africa own about 72% of land. This is an absolute myth. White farmers in South Africa own about 22% of land in the country. And it's very interesting that the ANC government is actually the majority, or the single biggest majority landowner in the country. And we need to ask the question why they aren't sharing the land with previously disadvantaged groups, and why we don't see them coming to the party saying how we can share with people who need to feel or see some form of restitution.
Now, I'd like to get Ian to some specifics. We keep being told, no, there's nothing to see here. Take us through, you've provided some photos, Robert Lynn, John Eckhart and others. Talk us through these specific individual cases of people who have been attacked that you yourself can vouch for.
Yeah, well, you know, we can think of John Eckhart, for example. I think it's a very relevant story to tell. You know, John, in 2015, I visited his murder scene. It happened on New Year's Eve of that year. And when we arrived on the scene, you can see his picture on the screen at the moment. John Eckhart was an elderly man. He had been attacked on his own in his house. And when we arrived there, we found his nail marks in the carpets through which, or because of how he was dragged through the house during the time that he was tortured. The attack lasted about 9 hours. And no one till this day knows whether there were 4 or 5 attackers during the attack. And obviously, this is just one of many. If we go to Robert Lynn was lucky to survive, but I think sometimes he almost wishes that he had somehow taken his wife's place. His wife was murdered on a farm in the Mpumalanga province, and you'll see on the photo the blowtorch that Robert is holding. His wife was murdered by the attackers and her body dumped later, and he was burnt with that blowtorch as a type of torture. And obviously this had a major influence on his psychological well-being. And obviously you can imagine the trauma that you go through after witnessing something like this. If you take it a little bit further, I'm going to jump right in, and you look at Nikki Simpson, for example. I sent you those photos as well. Nikki, I know her very well personally, and I've spent a lot of time with her. Nikki was attacked about a year ago on a farm just at the south of the Gauteng province in South Africa, and she was drilled through her feet with an electric drill, and this obviously destroys someone's feeling of safety, their vulnerability. Once again, an elderly lady attacked alone. And this type of cruelty is something that we very often see during farm attacks.
So, Ian, we decided not to show a couple of those photos. As you rightly pointed out, they were extreme in their kind of graphic brutality. But we do have the last couple of shots of, I think it's Wilmentia, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, that's correct. Willemientjie Potgieter. And you would have noticed that our Deputy CEO of Afriforum, Ernst Roots, recently released a book called Kill the Boer, and it's about government complicity in farm attacks. And if you look at that little girl on the screen, Willemientjie Potgieter, she was 2 years old, almost 3 years old, when she was murdered with her parents that you see on the other side, Wilna and Atti Potgieter, on a farm in the Free State province. Now, I was personally there, and I also attended the court case, and it was shocking to see how this destroys an entire community, from farm workers to farmers themselves, where an entire rural community are furious because there is no attempt from government side to truly stop this problem. Now, Willemientjie herself was shot in the back of the head. Her father was stabbed more than 40 times with a garden fork, and her mom was put in a prayer position before she was shot in the back of the head. So these are just a few examples of the true nature of these very cruel crimes in South Africa. And as I've noted with some of the statistics, we are really worried about the fact that our government isn't coming forward and really taking a stance, and that there's a certain double standard when it comes to combating these crimes, and almost a watering down. After Peter Dutton earlier this year spoke of the issue of farm attacks in South Africa, we saw that our Minister Lindiwe Sisulu, specifically focused on foreign affairs, immediately released a press release that made it very clear that there's no issue in South Africa, that people are safe in South Africa, and that there's no form of farm attack. And obviously this is a blatant lie that misleads the international arena about what truly is happening in our country.
So what, Ian, briefly, we're just about out of time, but what can Australia do to help, and what are you hoping to get out of your contacts with the Australian government?
Well, from our side, we feel it's very important that we continue putting pressure from Australia's side on the South African government to do something, support an organisation like Afriforum. We've got 7,500 volunteers across South Africa that are trained well and that handle these types of situations, that support victims on the ground, that react to these atrocious crimes, and that act proactively and support the police where they can, because the police lacks resources. And obviously you can see my Twitter handle on the screen. Please follow it on Twitter and use that to spread the news. I report on every single farm attack in the country, and through spreading the news into the world, I feel that we can gain a lot of momentum and pressure the South African government into hopefully doing something about this problem.
Well, thank you, Ian Cameron, so much for coming on Outsiders today. Good luck with your mission. I know you've been speaking to Andrew Hastie, among others, in the Australian government. I hope they're listening to you, and I hope that we see, hopefully, a better future going forwards. Thank you, Ian Cameron, for talking to us from Perth.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.